In today's video, I'll show you guys how to turn something that sounds like this into something that sounds like this. So let's hop into it. First things first, let's start with the drums. So with all these drums, with the hi-hats, all these hi-hats and the snare, I took out bass. The reason why I take out bass on hi-hats is because even though you can't hear it, hi-hats have some sort of bass in them. Here's an example. So you hear that? It's real quiet. If you listen, you can hear the bass from the cymbal. Let's try a hi-hat. Let me see. Hear that? That's bass that you don't want. So I always take out the bass just to make it sound a little bit cleaner. Up next, we have the kick drum. The kick drum is very important because you want the kick drum to knock, but you also don't want the kick drum to cancel everything else out and all you hear is the kick. So usually I take out the high-end frequencies. Sometimes I leave them just in case I want to have a little bit more character with the kick drum. But for this instance, I took out the higher frequencies and I took out the sub frequencies because I didn't want the kick drum to take all the space from the bass line. So I'll tell you a little bit more about that later in the video, but yeah. And that's pretty much it for the drums, all right? You also want to make sure that you have some drums that actually sound good together, because if the drums don't match, no matter what you do, the drum pattern's not going to sound good. Even if you mix it properly, they're just not going to sound good. So make sure you have some drums that actually sound good together. Now with the sample, I took out most of the bass. I didn't take all of it out right here, but I took out most of it up to 100 hertz. And that's because I want to have some space for the bass line to breathe once again. Same with the kick drum. I had to make some space. So I took out the bass and I left the mids and I added some highs just to make it sound a little bit cleaner. And here's a preview of the sample. Actually, this is actually a sample that I made. But yeah, I'm going to be working on the sample pack eventually. So I've been making samples just to get a little bit better at that. But yeah, let's get back into it. So I took out the bass, added some mids and added some highs or whatever. And I also added a compressor, but I didn't add this compressor for some compression. I added this for the sidechain. Now I routed the sidechain to the kick drum so that whenever the kick drum is activated or triggered, it makes the sound basically duck. So this is a cheat code because this makes your kick drum sound like it's actually hitting hard when it's not really doing anything. It makes it sound like it's louder because the sample is ducking every time the sidechain is triggered. So let me show you guys how that works. Every time the sidechain is triggered by the kick, it makes the sample duck, as you can hear. And this is the compression meter. So usually I try to shoot for 15. Never try to have your sidechain going all the way to 20. I just feel like that's too much in my opinion. And I usually have a quick release. So I'm gonna just play around with these and show you guys the different ways that sidechain can sound. So for the bass line, it's pretty simple. All I did was take out pretty much most of the high frequencies and left a little bit of the mids and the low end. So as you can see right here, this was that range that I was removing from the sample, and I was also removing it from the kick drum. And the reason why I was doing that is because I didn't want to have this bass line playing, but it was also clashing with the other sample and the bass line. So it's really important for you guys to make space. The last thing I want to talk about in this video is how to make your beats louder. So this is my setup on Ableton: a compressor, a saturator, and an EQ8. And let me show you how it sounds without this setup, and then I'll show you how it sounds with it. As you can see, when I had it off, it kind of sounded like it was empty. It wasn't full. It wasn't filling in spaces. But once I turned it on, those spaces got filled up and sounded like the beat was alive. So the way that this setup works is I have the compressor and I kind of just go extreme and put it like anywhere from like 30 to all the way down with the threshold. So that's typically where I tend to leave the threshold, and that causes the beat to get compressed so much that, you know, you have loud sounds and then you have quiet sounds, and those loud sounds are just as loud as the quiet sounds now because the sound is being compressed so much. So when you do that, you get a sound like this, and it sounds quiet. So the way that I fix that is I add a saturator and I raise it anywhere from 15 to 20 decibels depending on how quiet, how much threshold I add. So you can also use a limiter or any other effect that'll raise the volume of the sound. But let's go ahead and play the beat with the compressor. And as you can hear, it's not loud at all. So I use the saturator to raise the volume. The reason why I use a saturator and not a limiter is because you get to play around with the sounds with these little filters down here. I don't really do it too often, but this is my preset, so every time I open Ableton, it's a saturator. Now, the last thing on this rack, the last thing in this video is a EQ8. So we just have an equalizer right here. Add some of the bass. I usually don't add too much bass because if you add too much bass, it's not gonna work out, you know? It's more about having enough space. I took out some of these frequencies right here, and these are bad frequencies. So let me show you how these actually sound. Did you hear that? It sounds like somebody in the background is, I don't know, humming or something. It's not pleasant. It's known as a bad frequency or resonant frequencies, I believe. And typically find it, lower it. And the way that you find it is you grab a band and you just raise the Q and drag it along the equalizer until you hear the humming sound. So I just lost where it was at, but we can find it just by doing that same technique. So there it is. So now when I find it, take it down, just like that. You can do it all the way, you can do it halfway. That one was pretty harsh, so I decided to do that all the way. Here's another one. That one's not too bad, so we'll just lower it a little bit. Then raise the highs just to make it sound a little bit more crisp, and there you have the beat. So that's typically the things that I do to make my beats sound a lot more full, a lot louder, I guess you could say. And that's pretty much how I mix my beats when I'm going for a profession. That's pretty much how I mix my beats when I'm going for a profession. Oh my god. Okay. That's how I mix my beats when I'm going for a professional sound. Sometimes when I'm making boom bap, I like to have a little bit more dirt. I like to have a little bit dirty sounds or whatnot. But this right here was just a quick little video on how I get clean mixes and make my beats louder. That's gonna do it for this video. Hopefully you guys learned something new, and hopefully you take these tricks and, you know, utilize them in your beats. But with all that being said, peace out. Oh, make sure you subscribe.